Welcome everyone to the ECPC podcast. And this podcast is meant to offer mentorship to people who are still studying and they're looking for a job, and people who are graduated and they want to have a better understanding of the market. So ECPC is offering this podcast in order to bring you closer to the journey of successful geospatial professional people from ASPRS, and to offer you some guidance, what to do, what are the things needed, and maybe to inspire you, not maybe, for sure, to inspire you to take leadership role in ASPRS and to be a successful professional. So today we welcome Jason Stoker. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we want to, in a way, like to tell us about your background and career journey. How did it start? And.
Okay. Yeah, well, since I've been around for about 25 years, this may be a longer story than maybe some other folks, and I'll focus more on some of the earlier parts because I think that's more what the folks that you're trying to reach to be interested in. But yeah, so my journey starts back in the early mid 90s. I got my bachelor's in natural resource management at Colorado State University. And while I was going to school, in order to help pay for school, I also worked at a restaurant. I bartended for a while. And when I graduated with my bachelor's, I was actually making more money as a bartender than anything I could find coming straight out of school. So for the year after I got my bachelor's, I actually just bartended at this restaurant for a while. And finally, I realized that this is not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I wanted to get back out, so I ended up taking a seasonal opportunity at the Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station to go out and do some tree mapping in this area just west of Denver that had been fenced off from logging and grazing for since 1905. So it was a really beautiful, intact, pristine front range forested areas. And we were going out to look for old growth ponderosa pine out there, and then do some cores on the trees and get the fire history for that area. So I did that for the summer, and the leader, Merrill Kaufman, at the time really liked what I had been doing, and so offered me a temporary position at the Forest Service there to work on that. And from that, I kind of, with my background in GIS, I ended up doing a lot more of the GIS work for the team as we looked at fire history and fire ecology in Colorado Front Range. So did that, and then I parlayed that into getting my master's at Colorado State while I was still working at the Rocky Mountain Research Station, and was under the guidance of Dr. Roger Hoffer, who's a former ASPRS president. And I had been looking at remote sensing methods for fire-related applications, fire behavior, and so on. And Roger Hoffer said, "Hey, I've got this colleague of mine. He's developed one of the first commercial LiDAR instruments, a guy by the name of David Box. And he was wanting to see how well his system worked in forested areas. And I know you've been out there mapping trees and getting their locations, and would really like to see how well these LiDAR point clouds look related to the actual trees on the ground." And I got a little annoyed at first because I was already partway through getting my thesis together on Landsat and all this stuff, and I didn't know what LiDAR was. And so begrudgingly, I said yes. And so for 25 years more, I've been working on LiDAR ever since, which I guess has kind of paid off to take that risk. But
Yes.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So what inspired you first? I'm saying to go and pursue your master's degree since you had a GIS knowledge and you were working and producing. So for people who finish their bachelor degree, when do you know that you need to go for further studies? Did anybody inspire you at work, or you felt like you learn more? Or...
Yeah, it was just that continual quest for knowledge, learning how to do things better. And then being in a place that was so close to a university really helped. My office at the Forest Service was right off the campus of CSU. That made things really easy. My supervisor at the time, he had ties with Colorado State, and so that really helped me get in there for my master's. And yeah, so for that part, so I ended up being one of the really early adopters of linear mode LiDAR in the around, I love to say that the turn of the century. Kind of makes me feel really, really old then, but yeah, around the 2000 or so, I was working on LiDAR before we even had an LAS specification. All the data that we were working on was either, these customized binary files or even ASCII data, so we could share it with others. So just a comma delimited text file with a bunch of attributes tagged to it. So that kind of shows my age there. And then in about 2002, I ended up graduating and just happened to see this position at the USGS, at USGS Aeros, where they were looking for someone to bring LiDAR data into the National Elevation Data Set. So to me, it just kind of, these paths just kind of, opened up in front of me, and I just ended up taking it and applied for the position. And at the time, there were maybe, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe 2 dozen people that really knew what LiDAR was back then. And so I ended up getting that job and moving from Colorado to Sioux Falls to work at Aeros as a contractor for USGS. The first week I was there, they asked me to travel down to St. Pete to give a presentation in front of all of these USGS professionals on LiDAR to try to teach them. So I had to pretend like I really was this expert in LiDAR. I just happened to know more than a lot of the people at the time. I wouldn't have called myself an expert at all. So
It's
I ended up
relative.
working at
It's
Aeros
relative.
for, what's that?
It's relative. I'm saying you
Yeah,
are the expert. It's relative. So
it's totally relative. Yeah.
yeah.
And sometimes you just have to, fake it till you make it kind of thing too, which is what I started to do because I didn't have any confidence. I was just this green kid with a master's coming out, talking to people with their PhDs and, USGS folks who had been there for 20, 30 years and had to pretend like I really knew my stuff. And so it
And
ended up
also, there was
working
not a
out.
lot of resources. So you took a challenging path. Now, if you want to learn something where the knowledge is already mature and somehow user friendly, so it's like
Yeah,
the AI age now. Whoever
yep,
jumps and take the lead, they will not know everything at the beginning. There is a learning
absolutely.
curve.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is really very inspiring. So a great story we have here. In 2000, people did not hear about LiDAR. I mean,
Not too
people
much.
in the geospatial field. I'm saying in the geospatial field, not the people, regular people.
Right.
The
Yeah.
professional people in the geospatial field, a lot of them didn't hear about LiDAR. We have Jason started the emerge approach. So he throw them himself in the middle and start learning until he grow his knowledge where he's now contributing to the industry. So this is, I think, a great story for people who want to jump into AI. If you are a
I
fresh
agree.
graduate, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what they like the old saying is history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And I do think, that's kind of the way it is with AI right now. You know, uh, when I started working with LiDAR, we were still trying to show that it was preferable technology to photogrammetry. I still had to convince others who had been doing photogrammetry for 20, 30 years that this new technology was going to change everything. And it was still kind of like AI is, for the way I feel like AI is right now. It's a solution in search of a problem. LiDAR was really similar to it back then. We didn't know exactly what LiDAR was capable, or what it would be able to be used for, but we just tried to apply this new technology to as many problems as we could, and see how well it performed.
So what's your advice for fresh graduates who go into an organization who wants somebody to take the lead on digital transformation and automation and AI? So what's your advice, especially that the geospatial field is not mature at the AI level? I'm just saying, like, because you took that journey where you self-taught yourself a lot of things in order to, to be able to have a certain capacity and contribute. So what's your advice to those people?
Yeah, one of the things that I found really beneficial when there weren't just textbooks or answers in front of me is there were a lot of parallels in other industries. So, for example, medical imaging, there were a lot of parallels to what we were trying to image with LiDAR, and even other remote sensing technologies that the medical imaging community did. Some of the first 3D software that I messed around with to bring LiDAR into was software developed for medical imaging, for example. And I think there's probably similar parallels. There's a lot of work being done in AI, and there are a lot of things that people probably can adapt and adopt to geospatial, that are going on in different industries. So yeah, make sure that when you're looking for literature or resources, do try to look outside of your normal field, because sometimes there's some real good nuggets of truth out there that you can find.
Great advice. Thank you very much. And I'm gonna, start looking at other, especially the medical field, as you said, because technology-wise, they are very advanced and we can learn a lot from them.
Yeah.
So for fresh graduates, what are the essential skills do you think that they need, or the market? Because they learn the theory part, they might apply. Some undergrad people, they don't even have some research. So what are the things that they need to make sure they are competent with?
I think a couple things are really beneficial, especially starting out, and one of them is getting comfortable with a programming language of some kind, getting more familiar. It's the analogy is learning a foreign language gives you so many more opportunities for different careers. In any industry, learning a programming language or two or three, or understanding how they work, gives you opportunities to explore and maybe even look at potential jobs that you didn't necessarily go to school for, but you have this tool set, this toolkit that you can use on some of these different kinds of applications. I think another thing that's been very valuable to me, especially as someone who's focused a lot on research, is getting really comfortable with statistics is really important to understand things like uncertainty and how you represent the measurements and the interpretations of those measurements as it relates to the real world, because in the end, we're all supposed to be tying in our work to the real world and what's on the ground. And it's not a perfect fit, and you really need to be able to convey what that uncertainty is between your answer and the real world, or at least your answer and a separate measurement of what you are trying to represent. So statistics for me has been really big, and I've seen an explosion in um, data scientist positions that are out there that is just mining all of this data. And the fundamental piece of that they're using is statistics to do a lot of this, whether it's, different kinds of modeling. I did random forest modeling for my PhD. We wouldn't have called it machine learning back then, but it is a variant of that. Before that, I used in the early 2000s something called genetic algorithms, which is another kind of form of machine learning. It was an early kind of aspect of that, but we never would have thought to call it AI or
Yeah.
anything like that. So those kinds of foundational skills, I think, will be useful to anybody who's getting into the geospatial field.
So if you are hiring people, a fresh graduate versus people who are established. For the fresh graduates, when you look at the CV, what are the things that you look at? Is it the school? Is it the experience? So do you recommend people join a well-established company or a startup? What are the things that you think have more weight? And as a fresh graduate, you think I'm getting the experience, but it might be not the right place to get the experience where you're not challenged. You're doing some work that's not challenging. So what are the things that you look at? And as a professional, do you
Yeah,
look at the LinkedIn or you look at the CV after people who are established?
the social media aspect is important because that kind of shows how you can communicate some of these very technical aspects in a way that that makes sense to others. Sometimes people can be extremely technical and not be able to communicate that information very well. And a lot of times that can hurt you. When it comes to looking at applicants, I don't think we ever get to bogged down with the how good the university necessarily was. It's for us in the work that we look at. It's more the applied side. So what kinds of skills are you bringing to this? What is the base of skills and knowledge that you have that you can build from? We don't necessarily expect people to know everything, stepping in and being able to solve all our problems from day one. But what we do want is somebody who is willing to take the skills that they've had and expand on them. And like I said before, fake it till you make it. Make sure that you're able to say, yes, I can do that, and then go figure it out. That's a really important skill. And it takes confidence to be in yourself, to be able to say, yeah, I can do that, even if you maybe aren't sure exactly how you're going to do it from the get-go.
Amazing. So we have a part about the advice. So I think you already said it. Yes,
Oh, good.
I can do that and go figure it out. So that's a great advice. So what are the industry trends that you are looking and you think it's gonna change or shape the future of the geospatial industry?
In geospatial, yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit. I do think AI
Yeah.
seems to be at the forefront. I've seen a lot of people asking what can we use AI for? I don't personally like that question. I usually want to know what the problem is and then what's the best way to solve it. AI may be the most efficient way. But at the same time, that's the wave that I've seen come through. The other thing I've seen is just, and this is why AI is probably becoming so prolific, is just the amount of data and information that we are able to access now quickly. It offers opportunities that I never had when I was getting my work together. Dating myself, I remember people complaining how they had to buy a single Landsat scene to do a dissertation or what have you, and it was $600, and they didn't have $600 to do it. And then, while I was at Eros, they opened up the archive to, for free for everyone. And I think the explosion of research that happened from that was amazing. And now we are just seeing an exponential amount of growth from all these different sensors, and the time series of information that's possible now in remote sensing is something that I never had access to, or the ability to compute all of that data. So I think those kinds of things are key. The other thing that I've noticed is when it comes to geospatial is just the level of precision and accuracy of these measurements has made GIS and geospatial become such a personal thing now, that folks like, Google have these immersive mapping abilities now, that you can go through your route virtually and see what it's going to look like on a bike ride even now. And to me, that's where we're going. That's where we're going, is these kinds of mapping at a personal scale that was just not possible even 10 years ago. And I think the three-dimensional aspect obviously is a critical piece of that, as well as tapping into markets such as, mapping in indoor spaces and creating 3D maps along those lines, kind of breaching the whole GIS versus BIM modeling, CAD modeling types of applications. I think are just going to keep growing and growing.
And since your specialty is in LiDAR, at the sensor level, what do you think? Any industry trends?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some examples where, there's companies out there that are collecting SAR at very high resolution. There's even a startup that's going to try to do LiDAR for the globe at, very high resolution. I think some of these things that were focused on a project for LiDAR especially are going to just, the area collections are just going to get bigger, and we're going to be focusing and looking at three-dimensional changes over time at very high resolution and high precision. I think that's kind of the direction that's going in. The other thing that we're looking at quite a bit is topography. So looking at three-dimensional information underwater, especially for 3DEP and USGS in particular. We're looking at lakes and rivers, and how do we take and use sonar that other groups are collecting and integrate it and have it be useful as we put all of this elevation data together.
Interesting. And can you tell us about an interesting, challenging geospatial project that you were part of and you felt like that can be, your prime project?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about one that we're working on right now. I think it's really interesting. So we have a project that's looking at the potential to collect LiDAR for 3DEP and imagery for NAPE concurrently. And in order to do that, we are we've done a couple contracts to look at pilot data for that, with a couple different sensors. And the part that I've really enjoyed is, and I haven't had the chance to do this for several years, is actually get out in the field and go collect validation data for it. So we've been working on getting ground-based LiDAR TLS data, total station data, RTK, GNSS data, even UAS data. And I even went out with my iPhone Pro and collected some LiDAR over these plots, and really reminded me of, as I mentioned before, how the work that we do, it may be remote sensing, as in we can all sit in the office and look at places have that synoptic perspective. But when you really remember why you get into these fields, to be part of, get outside and realize, how these measurements and these things that you are looking at tie into what's really on the ground. I really forgot the importance of that part until I did that recently, came in and collected, helped collect some validation data for these airborne sensors, and reminded myself why I was in this field to begin with. And that's to look at, the spatial relationships between things in the natural. For me, it's mostly in the natural world, but I mean, engineered systems are just as important.
And it's similar to your experience with the tree mapping, where you went and validated they had some LiDAR. I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, your master's, you said, part of your
Yeah,
master's.
yeah. And like, so that all kind of ties back, right? So
Of course, but instead of
things
one
that
sensor
I
now,
was doing 25 years ago is
yeah,
are things that we're still improving on today.
and it's a fusion of sensors. So there is a lot, instead of one sensor, it's now you're looking at different things, which one is more accurate, and
Yeah.
this is very interesting. Uh, and so what would be your advice regarding finding a mentor? Somebody who just graduated, they are looking, maybe they don't know even about ASPRS, let's say, and they watch this YouTube, or, what's your advice for them?
I think, most of my mentors have been people that I've been directly in contact with. So, and not necessarily just supervisors, but my advisors. I'm still very close to Dr. Hoffer, who is my master's advisor. I still keep in touch with him even after all these years. The other thing is there's different types of mentors. So there's, you can look at someone who may know a lot academically about things. You may also want to ask someone if they're willing to guide you on some of the more soft skills, like communication skills, some of these nuanced things. Some people get a lot of things accomplished that have nothing to do with necessarily their education. And some of those things are hard to teach, but a good mentor can kind of give you tips on how they make those things work.
Thank you. And about future prediction, how do you foresee the geospatial industry evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think I kind of covered this. I think we're just going to see more and more data coming in at higher and higher resolution, higher and higher precision. I think that we're going to see integrations with different data streams that are going to bring insights. I think I've seen an explosion of startups that are not in control of any single data stream, but they actually are, because the data is being made available easily, they're able to bring in all these disparate data sources and create information for decision making from it. And I think that's been really exciting to see the wide variety and the niches of companies being able to take the remote sensing and GIS data and turn it into analytics and insights. I don't see that going away anytime soon. I just see more and more of that becoming possible.
Okay, one question also, uh, because automation and the softwares are there, and there's a lot of people who graduate and they end up in a position where they press buttons. What's your advice to those people? They are
Like I
productive.
mentioned,
They are
yeah,
productive, but
you have to you have to make sure that you're a lifetime learner. I think that's really important, even if it's on the side. I can't believe how many colleagues I have that do their 9 to 5 and then still go home and do GIS processing for fun. I personally, I'm tired of looking at a computer when I'm done with my day, but I know a lot of folks have this devotion to just continue to learn, even if it's not something that work is paying them to do. And I see them being able to take those lessons and those skills that they learn on their own time and transform those into other opportunities as well, which I think is really cool. So like I mentioned, I think if there's one thing you can do right now, even if you're a button pusher, is learn how to code some kind of code, then you can create your own buttons. There may not be a button that does exactly what you want to do in software. I've seen so many customized solutions just out there. And that's the other thing with GitHub and R and these other resources. There are so many things that you can take and use and improve and build upon and make your own. That's really been exploding in the past 5-10 years for sure as well.
Excellent. You highlighted a very good point, which is like continuous learning. Thank you very much for bringing this up. And I like the way you said, instead of pressing on the button, keep thinking what's happening behind and try to write your own to differentiate yourself and to have a competitive edge on other people. So final question is about any inspiration and insight, any inspiring moments from your career that, let's say, went you for your PhD, or what was any story that you can share with us? Would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that as I look back now that I've noticed I've been fortunate in, part of it is getting to where I was has been part luck, but it's also been the fact that when presented two opportunities, I could feel which one was the right one and ended up, taking chances that paid off in the end. You just sometimes you wonder if you have a good gut feeling about an opportunity or a fork in the road, you should take it. And a lot of times it's going to really pay off for you. I think I've been lucky that way where I just had opportunities and could tell if it was the right or the wrong opportunity simply by a gut feeling. Go with your gut a lot of times and you'll be good.
Thank you very much, Jason. This has been really very inspirational, and we are very happy to have you. And I want to ask you if you're okay with us recording this. Of course, we recorded, but I'm putting it on social media. I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah, it's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, and we see the value, the continuous value it's going to be over time for anybody who have access to the YouTube channel with ASPRS. I know you contributed a lot to ASPRS, but this is going to be specifically for the early career people. So we appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And thanks for doing this, Youssef. I
Appreciate.
see a lot of value here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Inspired by leaders like you. So we're very happy to contribute also. Thank you.
Thanks.
We got one more question there, Jason. If people want to reach out and get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
If you're an ASPRS member, you can just look me up in the community page, or you can, I guess you can probably just Google my name or Google me on LinkedIn, and you can get my email and contact information that way. And
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, Jason.